Hey everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoins could be headed. Now today we're looking at XRP, and it's been a while since we've covered it on the channel. So what we're going to be doing in this video is just looking at the broad strokes XRP makes from cycle to cycle, and more specifically we're going to be examining the differences that XRP makes from cycle to cycle and compare the cycle that we just exited to perhaps previous cycles and see how similar they are. So getting straight into it, we'll have a look at what we did last cycle. Of course, we're now in this new cycle. Halving's been back in April. Another 4 years or so until the next Bitcoin halving. We can see things to note are XRP, once it crosses the halving, it puts in a low, and while it does return to that low, it never goes lower than that. So XRP bottoms out for the cycle, and while that means we can return to lows, we can see that this cycle we didn't break down below them. Also, thing to note is we put in our high approximately 48 weeks after the halving. Now, a quick tidbit, this isn't actually the all-time high for XRP. As we can see, last cycle we obviously went higher. Last cycle we went to about $3.50. This cycle just gone, we went to about $2, just under. So again, something to be aware of and something we'll address later on. But we put in our high about 48 weeks afterwards. And then you could argue the rest of this is a bear market. We definitely have at least a year of a bear market, or in fact. And then you could also argue that this technically is an upward trend. What we've seen here, we keep bouncing off these lows. It's not a bull run, in my opinion. So cool. That's what we've currently had. So again, recap, entering quite low. We crossed the halving, and that sets our low in terms of the range that we operate in. We put in our high pretty soon afterwards, a couple of months, less than a year basically after the halving. And then we cross the halving into the next cycle at about a quarter of the price of our all-time high. We can see we crossed this halving at 50 cents roughly, and our cycle high, for XRP was about $2. So we're a quarter of $2 currently at 50 cents. Or you can measure it a different way, where if you want to take the low, which was about 16 cents, which is roughly a third of 50 cents. So you can say that we're 3 times above the low, or we're a quarter of the high. Now zooming out, if we take a look at last cycle, we can see that very clearly it's very different, especially in terms of volatility. Back in 2017, the bull run was brilliant for XRP. Lots of people made a lot of money. It went from trading at around half a cent to again a high of $3.50, which is a phenomenal return. And again, disappointing that we saw such lackluster price action this cycle, which again was basically the best bull run cryptocurrency ever saw in its lifetime, just with the amount of money, raw money that entered the space. Either way, we see that we enter at the low like we did with the previous cycle, and we have a rally pretty soon afterwards. But a key thing to note is that our peak is much further out after the bull run, approximately 78 weeks, or in and around 550 days after the halving. Where do we cross into the next halving? Well, it's definitely not at around halfway, a quarter of the high, or 3 times the low. I mean, if we take a look at the low, it was half a cent, and we crossed the halving at about 20 cents. So we're actually about 40x, if my maths is correct, from the low to the halving crossing point. So we can scrap the low kind of similarity for this cycle. And then if we take a look at the high, it was $3.50. And again, crossing the halving at about 20 cents, you're looking at about a 15x from here to the high. So 1/15th, again, not lining up with the 1 quarter that we kind of had last cycle. And another thing to note is that obviously volatility has shrank drastically, absolutely drastically, as the cycles have, gone on, or at least from the second cycle into the third cycle. If we take a look at the first cycle, what data we have of it, we can see something very similar. Now, this blue line actually represents when the Bitcoin halving would have taken place back in 2012. It was sometime in November, I think. It was more or less a year ago, so I just took a year back from here, just to give us a rough idea of kind of the time frame that we're working with. So again, about 54 weeks, probably a small bit longer. So you could say 57, 58 weeks when we put in this high after the halving. And again, crossing the halving at a low. if we again take a look at this cycle, these two line up more similarly with the ends where we crossed the halving at a low. Here it was about a tenth of the all-time high at the time, or the cycle high. 6 cents was the high, and we crossed at basically 0.006 cents. So yeah, exactly a tenth. And the low was 1/5 of a cent, 0.02. So funnily enough, that actually works with the current cycle, where it was a 3x off the low is where we crossed the halving. So actually, these two here are quite similar in terms of the relation the low and the halving price have. The time frames also do work a slight bit more. We can see that from the next halving to the previous high, it was about 135 weeks. And we can see here, if we look at the current, or the cycle we just exited, the halving that just took place happened 158 weeks after the previous high, or after this cycle high. So 158 weeks took place until the next halving occurred, which again is much similar in terms of time frame. Now, some obvious dissimilarities is that we don't get this second wick this cycle. We haven't seen that. And you could also argue that we haven't seen that here either. I would kind of stretch it to say that we got this second wick here. This was our second wick. So this was our first move. It's equivalent to this one. And instead of such a harsh downturn, we just traded sideways. And then we got a second move. And this is more or less equivalent to that second move. And then we come back down to these lows. XRP comes back down to these lows. So again, variations from cycle to cycle. But I would argue that the last two cycles we've had these two moves to the upside. The cycle just gone, I would say we haven't. We haven't seen them. You could argue, you could really argue, if you wanted to be adamant, that this move and this move were your two kind of bullish moves. But first of all, the moves were very poor. And second of all, the time frames that take place between them just don't line up. So again, glaring dissimilarity. We don't get this minor bull run, is what I like to call it. We don't get the minor bull run, and we haven't had one this cycle. However, we have seen similar moves in volatility kind of to our current range high. And if you want to maybe make a bit of an assumption, but not an unreasonable one, maybe, and say, well, I think XRP is following a kind of a pattern every two cycles. So these two cycles, we see we have one boring bull run and one brilliant bull run. And now we've had our boring bull run, which lines up a lot with this guy, and we're going to have our brilliant bull run. We're now in our brilliant bull run cycle, and we're going to get this crazy move in the next few months. Well, first of all, how long should you expect to wait? After the halving, in the second cycle, it was 38 weeks afterwards, where XRP really rallied up. If we take 38 weeks from where we currently are, from the halving, it puts us out in January 2025. So this is when I would personally believe the bull run is going to take place early next year, or at the earliest, late this year. So cool, we've started our bull run. How far up should you expect it to move? If you're going to copy and paste the last kind of price movements, you're looking at a 68,000% move. I don't know if I can fit that on this chart. I'm not even going to bother trying, to be honest with you. You can just guess it's parabolic, and to be honest with you, I think if you're expecting that move, you might want to reassess. You could be slightly deluded, to be honest with you. What could be more reasonable is you expect a similar price move. So the difference here in price was about $3.50. So could you see XRP going up $3.50? Where would that bring us? Well, some simple math would tell us that would bring us to about $4, which would be about in line, definitely higher, but similar enough to the best bull run XRP had. And we'd be outperforming that. We'd be going above. If I was holding XRP, I would not be holding it, expecting it to go $4. That's me. I'm very conservative when it comes to crypto, because I just think it's more important to make gains than to risk it all and potentially make a lot less. Like, you can almost argue that $2 is on the cards for XRP this coming cycle, because we've entered this cycle at a much higher price, which is a bullish sign. And because of all these other factors that we've spoken about, we might expect a stronger bull run from XRP this year. There's also the social factors, like there's no longer a lawsuit, they're not being sued by the SEC. All these other things that could allow for better price movement for XRP. If most people were assuming a $4 XRP, I would want to be selling around $3, but it's your money and it's your choice. You kind of should be making these decisions yourself. I just like putting charts in front of people and hopefully making them think and starting some discussion in the comments. Anyway, with that said, taking a look at the Bitcoin chart. Now, I haven't actually changed this very much at all since the last video, which was a while ago. I think it was February, to be honest with you. And I drew this kind of support, this trend that XRP has followed, and we followed it perfectly, more or less. And this low actually met, and we've kind of bounced a little bit. Now we're back down at this low currently, so we could very well break below. It doesn't mean it has to hold. I would be super impressed with myself if it did hold, but like realistically, it'll probably break lower, because if we take a look at what happens to XRP after the halving, every halving so far, it's lost value to BTC within kind of 34 months or so. And again, 34 months, that's kind of when you'd argue the bull run starts. And if you want to go line up those dates, you can see it's 2017 when the bull run kind of kicked off. And that's when we kind of bottomed out on the BTC pair. 2021, that's when the main bull run happened. And, you know, XRP didn't perform great that bull run. Again, there was a lot of stuff going on. And the fact that it's just an older altcoin. And we've seen that these older alts just don't perform as well as cycles go on. But we did see the kind of 2021 rally that obviously made lots of money in many other altcoins. And that took place, again, 34 weeks afterwards. Another key thing to notice is that we are a bit similar to this halving again on the BTC pair, where we're crossing the halving at a much lower price compared to the volatility of that cycle. So we can see we're crossing at the low here. And again, looking at current halvings, we're crossing at the low. Not quite at the low, but we're crossing pretty low. So we're not quite, the similarities with this middle cycle aren't lining up too much. They're more pointing towards this guy. And again, we got a much stronger rally leading into this second cycle. We're now leading into the fourth. We can also see that the kind of volatility range, again, smaller, but this guy is definitely an outlier in terms of the range that it operated in. This was just a really bad cycle for XRP. A lot of bad stuff dampening and weighing down the price, in my opinion, or just preventing money from going into it. So hopefully with those speculations gone, we won't see such poor price performance. But if we do see poor price performance this cycle, I would really argue that XRP is kind of washed, and hopefully it does perform well. But if we get another kind of $2 in the bull run, assuming that the rest of the crypto space does really well and XRP is left behind again, I would be very wary of putting any money in XRP. And I think everybody else would be, except the kind of either the bag holders or the kind of fanatics that fall in love with the project. And you have to think about, it's not important whether I love the project, it's important whether lots of people can love the project and will love the project. And if you have 2 cycles of terrible performance, it's very unlikely that many people are going to look at that and go, yeah, I want to put my money in there because I know I'm going to make a lot of money. They're going to put it in the new shiny things. So just something to be aware of. Hopefully it doesn't come to fruition. Just something to think about. Anyway, I think that's kind of everything. Again, kind of quick thing to note as well, we often basically trade down for the majority of the cycle for XRP. And again, this one was a bit of an outlier where we actually kind of traded sideways basically for what was the bear run. So while the bull run was pretty poor, the bear run was also, well, it was pretty good, at least compared to BTC. And again, just a reminder, BTC fell 75%. So it was brilliant for a cryptocurrency, but also not great in terms of USD. Not too important though. Basically, no one knows where it's going. And if you believe in the project and you feel comfortable putting money in the project, do what you want. If you don't. Only invest in something you understand. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's glorified gambling. That's all it is. So make sure it's money that you can afford to lose. And on that note, that very jolly pro-crypto note, I'm going to end the video. So thank you very much for watching for this long. If you did, please leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. That's totally fine too. Please consider subscribing, so it really helps out the channel. Also, consider checking out my Twitter/X. I kind of made that recently, and I'll be putting up crypto memes as well as kind of video updates when they're coming out and stuff. Same thing with the Reddit, made the Reddit recently. Go join that with the link in the description, if of course you want to. Again, memes and video updates. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Take care and peace.